I would like for you to start by giving us some insight as to your educational experience, how you were someone who was able to pursue a STEM career. And we have a lot of parents in the audience. We have some young folks in the audience who are being driven to school right now as we speak, depending on where they're at in the country. So what was it for you as a young Black woman to enter into the STEM field? Talk with us about some of the challenges that you faced there.
Mm. Growing up, my father was a mechanical engineer. And so because of his influence and going to work with him and hearing him talk about work, I always thought I could be an engineer. It was always possible for me because I had that example. And, what was a turning point for me was being at MIT, being in my first mechanical engineering classes and looking around the room and seeing so few people who look like me. It made me realize that my reality growing up is not the reality of many people who look like me, right?
Yeah.
Because at MIT, sometimes in a classroom, I'd be the only Black woman. And what's unusual is that, or maybe what was surprising to me is, despite all that I accomplished to get to MIT and just all the confidence I had, being in that atmosphere made me question whether I belonged. And I started to pinpoint that as part of the problem, is that questioning, is that doubt. And now I know from looking at the research that it starts at a young age. And that's what I wanted to see if I can change.
And so where did the idea of bringing dance and connecting dance to STEM cover? And I've seen how the STEM acronym also includes STEAM, the A for art. But often in my mind, and I'm somebody who is recovering from my own traumas around math and reminding myself that I too have a brain and I too can be smart and good at math. But, so I've got my own background growing up in an era before Doc McStuffins, before like girls were expected to be good at math. And some might say we're still not in an era where girls are expected to be good at math. What was it about dance, though? I can see art in terms of the printed form or drawing with angles and shapes and whatnot. How did dance and STEM come together for you in your mind?
Well, in addition to really loving math as a young kid, I also love dance. I'd say I was obsessed with dance. I just found dance to be fun and challenging. It's where my closest friends were. I just found it to really shape me as a young person and even as an adult. And when I was encountering this persistent issue of, this like doubt and questioning when it comes to STEM, that's what made me think about dance. I started to wonder, like, what would it look like if what it feels like to dance is what it feels like to learn about math and engineering. Because when
Wow.
I dance, I feel free, I feel expressive, I feel creative, I feel confident. Those are the words I want my student. You mentioned that I taught math. That's what I wanted my students to feel. That's what I want all girls, especially girls of color, to feel when they learn about math. And so that's where I started to dream, okay, is there some way that these two things can coexist, and not just coexist, but actually benefit one another?
Wow.
And so what we created at STEM from Dance is this experience where girls get to make dance performances that incorporate technology in some kind of way. So imagine costumes that light up and it's reactive to their movements. Every time they jump, it turns the color blue. Or animations that they can program and that get projected on the stage. And maybe that's also interactive with their motion or their mood or the sounds that they make. And really making this multimedia experience. And we put the girls in the driver's seat, so they get to make the choreography, they get to make the tech, they get to think of the theme and the message they want to convey, and really empower them to create both in dance and STEM.
One of the things that you guys showed really powerfully at that breakfast was the girls there was one costume that had different light bulbs on it. And you see the girls, yes, we see them preparing the dance studio time, but you also see them in the lab where they're wiring things together and figuring out whether does this wire go here and does this go over here, and let's make these things zap. And, I'm sure there's far more scientific knowledge and language that you all use to describe these things. But for me, it was like, ooh, put the blue one there and the red one makes it go pow. Like, so it's kind of like, that That was the way I explained it in my head. But
Mhm.
how are you able to teach them both things simultaneously? Because you said free, creative, confident, and those are not typically words that children of any color use to describe their experiences with learning math or technology. Talk with us
Mhm.
about how you infuse those feelings into the STEM component of the educational experience that these girls are having, because it really feels like you're doing something revolutionary when it comes to taking things that are ornately, or rather innately, a part of who we are, and
Mhm.
bridging them with knowledge that is also innately a part of our history, but
Right.
from which we've been cut off for so long. What
Mhm.
are the mechanics behind that?
Yes, it's a few things. I think one, there's a freedom that comes with knowledge. So we teach them just the basics of like what a circuit is. How does electricity flow? Like we turn on light switches all the time. Like how does that actually work? How does light work? And just teaching that in a way that's approachable, and really making sure that they understand what they're tinkering with. I think
Mm,
secondly is the atmosphere in which they're learning this matters. We set a lot of expectations about them being able to ask any questions. It really making it a safe space, making sure they have adults who are going to really encourage them along the way. So setting an atmosphere where it can feel joyful, where in the same room that
mm,
they're dancing, they're grappling with these questions about electricity. And I think also there is just a joy in being able to not just learn, just like sitting in a chair and taking notes from a chalkboard, but being able to make something, to like use your imagination and say,
right.
okay, I would love to make, sneakers that light up and I want to make them myself. There's just like
Mm,
this intrinsic motivation that comes when it's your own idea. And there's a motivation to say, okay, I learned about how electricity works and I want to make these sneakers. Okay, like let me really put my head down and try to figure this out along with other girls who have that same kind of curiosity. And I find like the combination of all these things creates this experience where they feel like their curiosity has a place to be supported
wow.
and a platform to be exhibited.
So this one of the reasons I'm fascinated by this is because it feels like they're learning mathematical concepts, they're learning engineering concepts through application. So it's
Right.
not just, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you're saying they're not just learning formulas that they have to memorize. They're not just learning a squared plus b squared equals c squared, like literally one of the only formulas from school I can remember, right? They're not just learning that, they're applying it in real time. Am I understanding what you're saying correctly?
That's right. And not only real time, but so for example, we have a summer program that's 3 weeks. They don't have to come in with any prior knowledge, right? But by the
Wow.
end of these 3 weeks, they get on stage and they perform in front of their friends, family, in a huge theater, right? So the
Mm,
stakes are pretty high. And each time they rise to it. Even girls who have like this, sometimes it's their first dance performance ever in life. And, not only are they performing on stage, but they're showing something that they made themselves. They're not just learning choreography from somebody else. So there's a vulnerability that comes with that. And that
mm,
vulnerability is rewarded by them stepping on stage and just getting this huge applause. And there's something that does to you when you
yeah.
step out, you step out your comfort zone, you do something you haven't done before, you're combining the STEM and dance together, and people just, love it. And that's part of what keeps them wanting to do more in STEM.
Mm. Now, with somebody who's been teaching as long as you have, and you have this multi-decade approach to dance, oftentimes right now when it comes to education in this country, it's as if art is an extra. Like it's an,
Mhm.
oh, and that would be nice too. Like, oh, here's the curriculum that matters. Oh, and let's see if we can find some intern to come and do a couple of art lessons with the kids. Can you talk with us from your advantage point? Because you have expertise both as an educator, as someone with a background in STEM, and as someone who has successfully fused together this program. Talk with us about the more central role that art should be playing in terms of education. And I'm not going to hide the ball on on this. We've had a doctor recently on, a number of folks actually throughout the history of this show that have talked to us about the power of music as an art form for learning. Like we learn our ABCs to a song. If you grew up in countries like Jamaica, you might have learned your numbers from 1 to 100 with the song. So, talk with us about the role that art should be playing in a society that was serious about education, because it feels to me like we are fundamentally missing it so long as art is also a plus thing. Like it's an additional thing if we get all the quote unquote important things handled. How do you see that?
Yeah. I will start by saying the reality, particularly within STEM, which is that about 5% of the STEM workforce consists of women of color.
Mm.
Right? That's the reality that we're facing. And if we want to change that and see equity take place, we have to do something different. And what happens is that there's this leaky pipeline. So, and it starts at a young age is when girls start to doubt themselves.
Yep.
There's research that shows that as young as 10 years old, they start to lose confidence in math,
Mm.
right? And that's what eventually leads to that 5%. And so if we're going to change that, we have to change how girls are seeing themselves and how they see themselves in math. So the arts gives us a chance to do that, because when you have something that you're intimidated by, when you're questioning yourself within, we have to reverse that. We have to reverse the narrative and really build up who they are. And the arts gives us a chance to do that because they already like to dance. They already feel
Yeah.
connected to dance. Dance is already reflected in their culture, in their
Yep.
community. Dance provides this space where they can feel welcome in an environment where they tend not to feel like they belong. Right?
Mm.
There's something that's unique about dance, and so I've just seen. I mean, I could tell you so many stories of girls who, they came in because they love to dance. And by the end of the program, their eyes really open up to STEM. And I think of one girl in particular who, that was her story. She came in loving dance. She came to our summer program. She came again the next summer. She came a third summer. And now she's a freshman at Georgia Tech studying computer engineering. And it was
Wow.
dance that initiated that spark in her to
Mm.
pursue that future in STEM. So I think the arts is just totally transformative.